I still remember the way she looked at me that night. Cold, distant, like I was nothing more than an obstacle in her way. Ava had always been good at hiding her true emotions, but this time, she didn't even bother. There was no warmth, no hesitation. Just a single sentence that shattered everything I thought I knew about my life. "You need to leave," she said, her voice flat. "I've already filed." For a moment, I thought I had misheard her. The words didn't make sense. We had argued, sure, but nothing out of the ordinary. Every couple had rough patches. Every marriage went through phases. But as I stared at her, taking in the way she stood there with her arms crossed, her eyes completely devoid of emotion, I realized that this wasn't a fight. This was the end. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stay calm. "Ava, what are you talking about?" She sighed like I was a stubborn child, shaking her head. "I'm done, Nick. I can't do this anymore. I've already spoken to my lawyer. You'll be served the papers in a few days." My stomach tightened, a wave of disbelief crashing over me. "You just decided this? Without even talking to me?" "We've been talking," she asterisk T back. "You just didn't want to hear it." I opened my mouth to argue, but something in her expression made me stop. She wasn't sad. She wasn't struggling with this decision. She had already moved on. "Haley is staying with me," she continued, her voice unwavering. "I'm filing for full custody." That snapped me out of my daze. "The hell you are," I snapped. "She's my daughter too. You can't just—" "I can," she interrupted. "And I will." The air in the room felt thick, suffocating. I looked past her, toward the staircase where our 4-year-old daughter was probably fast asleep, blissfully unaware of the nightmare her mother was creating. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, my voice lower now, almost pleading. "We can work through this. We don't have to go straight to divorce." She scoffed. "Work through what, Nick? The constant arguing? The resentment? I don't love you anymore. I haven't for a long time." The words hit harder than I expected. It wasn't just the way she said it, it was how easy it was for her to say, like she had been waiting to get it off her chest. I ran a hand through my hair, exhaling sharply. "So that's it? 7 years together, 5 years of marriage, and you're just, what? Throwing it all away?" "I'm moving on," she said simply. "And you should too." I should have been angry. I should have yelled, cursed, demanded answers. But I couldn't do anything except stare at the woman I had once thought I'd spend my life with and wonder how I had missed the signs. And then she delivered the final blow. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer," she added, walking toward the kitchen. "I'm requesting child support." I actually laughed, the sound bitter and humorless. "You're kidding, right? I already pay for everything. I've never once missed a bill for Haley." She shrugged. "It's the law. You're her father. You have an obligation to provide for her." I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "That's not what this is about, is it? You don't need child support. You just want to screw me over." She didn't deny it. That smug, self-satisfied expression told me everything I needed to know. I shook my head, my chest tightening. "You think you're going to win, don't you? That I'm just going to roll over and let you take everything?" Her smirk deepened. "I don't think, Nick. I know. I should have known then. I should have realized that Ava had already planned everything out to the last detail. That this wasn't just about ending our marriage. It was about destroying me in the process." The next few weeks were a blur of court filings, lawyer meetings, and nights spent tossing and turning in an apartment I never wanted. Ava wasted no time in moving forward with the divorce. The house, our house, was already being appraised. The joint accounts were frozen. She had taken every step necessary to make sure she came out of this with everything, while I was left scrambling to pick up the pieces. But the custody battle was what hit the hardest. Ava wasn't just asking for full custody. She was trying to limit my time with Haley, reducing me to a visitor in my own daughter's life. She painted me as unstable, as someone who couldn't provide the same level of care that she could. She twisted every argument, every disagreement we had ever had, turning it into evidence of why I wasn't fit to be a full-time parent. And the worst part? The courts listened. Even my lawyer, a seasoned divorce attorney, warned me that Ava had the upper hand. Judges tend to favor the mother in cases like this, he explained, especially if she can prove primary caretaking responsibilities. But I've been there for Haley since day one, I argued. I've taken care of her just as much as Ava has. Doesn't matter, he said grimly. It's about perception. And right now, Ava is painting a picture where you're just the dad who pays the bills. It made me sick. The idea that my role in my daughter's life could be reduced to a paycheck, that Ava could rewrite history and make it seem like I wasn't just as much of a parent as she was. I fought hard. I spent thousands on legal fees, pushing back against every accusation, refusing to let Ava dictate the terms of my relationship with Haley. I showed up to every hearing, every mediation, determined to prove that I wasn't going to disappear quietly. But Ava was always one step ahead. And when I lost my job, she went in for the K*LL. I had been working for the same company for years, but the stress of the divorce, the endless legal battles, the financial strain, it all caught up with me. My performance slipped, and eventually, my boss called me into his office. "We have to let you go, Nick," he said, his tone regretful. "It's just not working out." I felt the ground crumble beneath me. I had bills to pay. I had a child to fight for. And now I had nothing. Ava didn't waste a second. She immediately filed a motion with the court, claiming I was failing to meet my child support obligations. I had barely missed one payment before she took action, and the system didn't care why. The night they came to arrest me is burned into my memory. The pounding on the door, the sight of the officers standing there, ready to take me away like a criminal. The way the neighbors peeked through their windows as I was handcuffed on my own doorstep. And the only thought running through my mind as they shoved me into the back of the police car. Ava finally won. Or at least that's what she thought. Because what happened next? That's when everything changed. The first night in jail was the longest of my life. The walls felt like they were closing in, the air thick with the stench of sweat and cheap disinfectant. Every sound, shuffling footsteps, distant yelling, the clanging of metal bars, sent a jolt of rage through my body. How had it come to this? How had I gone from being a father fighting for his daughter to sitting in a freezing cell like some deadbeat criminal? The worst part wasn't the cold concrete bench I had to sleep on or the disgusting food they shoved through the slot in the door. It wasn't even the way the guards looked at me like I was nothing. No, the worst part was the thought of Haley. What had Ava told her? Did she think I had abandoned her? That I had stopped fighting? The idea that she might believe I didn't love her was worse than any sentence they could give me. I wasn't alone in that cell. There were others, men with the same hollowed-out look in their eyes. Some of them had been in and out of this place so many times they didn't even flinch when the guards barked orders. Others, like me, were first-timers. Fathers who had missed payments, who had lost jobs, who had tried to keep their heads above water but sank anyway. One guy, sitting in the corner with his head in his hands, muttered, "System's rigged, man. They don't care why you missed it. They just want their money." I barely slept that first night, my mind racing with everything I had lost. My job, my home, my time with Haley. But even in the darkest moments, one thought kept me going. I wasn't staying in this place. I wasn't letting Ava win. The days blurred together in a haze of routine. Wake up at dawn. Eat something that barely passed as food. Sit around, waiting for the next time they called my name for a court appearance that never seemed to come. The only thing that kept me sane was the occasional letter from my lawyer, though there was never any good news. "You need to come up with the money," he wrote. "That's the fastest way out." Money. I wanted to laugh. What money? Then, on the 20th day, something changed. A guard approached my cell, his expression unreadable. "You got mail," he said, sliding an envelope through the bars. I took it, my hands trembling. It wasn't from my lawyer. The return address was one I hadn't seen in years. Zach Carver. I hadn't spoken to Zach in almost 5 years. He had been my best friend once, the guy I trusted more than anyone. And then, out of nowhere, he vanished. Stopped returning calls, moved out of town, disappeared without a word. I had no idea why until now. I tore the envelope open, my eyes scanning the letter inside. "Nick, I can't stay quiet anymore. I should have told you years ago, but I was a coward. Ava and we had an affair. It started before you were married. Before Haley was born. I don't know if she's yours, man. The paper nearly slipped from my hands. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. No, this had to be a lie. Some sick joke. But the more I read, the clearer it became. Zach had been in love with Ava for years. She had told him she was leaving me, that she just needed time to get her life together first. But she never did. Instead, she stayed, had a child, and kept up the lie. Zach had waited for her. But when she chose to stay with me, he left town, unable to keep living a life built on secrets. And now, years later, he couldn't live with it anymore. I clenched the letter so hard my knuckles turned white. I wanted to scream, to punch the walls, to do something, anything, to release the fire burning inside me. Ava had taken everything from me. And now, there was a chance that Haley, the one thing I had been fighting for, wasn't even mine. I barely heard the guard calling my name for a phone call. My lawyer's voice crackled on the other end. Nick, we might have a way to challenge the child support ruling. If Haley isn't biologically yours, you could be released and… I want a paternity test. I interrupted, my voice shaking. There was a pause. Then, I'll see what I can do. The next few weeks felt like torture. I counted every second, every minute, waiting for the court to approve my request. In the meantime, I replayed every memory of Haley in my head. The first time she called me daddy. The way she clung to me when she was scared. The bedtime stories. The scraped knees I kissed better. The lullabies I had sung when she couldn't sleep. Even if she wasn't mine by blood, she was still my daughter. She always would be. But that didn't mean Ava was getting away with this. When the court finally approved the request, Ava was forced to bring Haley in for testing. She had the nerve to act outraged, as if I was the villain in all of this. You're doing this to hurt her, she spat when I saw her in the courtroom. You're selfish. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The truth was coming, and she knew it. 2 agonizing weeks later, the results arrived. 0%. Haley wasn't mine. The breath left my lungs. I had known this was a possibility, but seeing it written in black and white made it real. I was free, legally at least. The court dismissed my child support case immediately, ordering my release. I walked out of that place a different man than when I had entered. Ava thought she had one, but now she was the one scrambling. She had committed fraud, lied to the court, taken money from me under false pretenses. And I wasn't about to let her walk away unscathed. I met with my lawyer the next day. I want to press charges, I said. I want her to pay for everything. He nodded. We'll build a case. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice. Ava had destroyed my life. She had played me for a fool, manipulated the system, stolen years from me. But now the truth was on my side. And I was going to make damn sure she regretted every single thing she had done. I didn't go home right away. Home didn't even feel like home anymore. Instead, I drove for hours, aimlessly circling the city, gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. The weight of everything that had happened pressed down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Haley's face. The way she used to look up at me with those big brown eyes, the way she used to reach for me when she was scared, the way I used to think she was mine. I had spent years fighting for a child that wasn't even biologically mine, pouring my heart, my time, and every last dollar I had into making sure she was safe, loved, and cared for. And Ava had known. She had known all along and still let me believe the lie. The rage inside me burned hotter with every passing mile. By the time I finally pulled into my old neighborhood, it was nearly midnight. The house, our house, was dark except for the faint glow of a light upstairs. Ava was home, probably sleeping peacefully in the bed I had once shared with her, completely unaware that her entire world was about to crumble. I didn't want to knock, didn't want to give her the satisfaction of thinking I came crawling back. Instead, I pulled out my phone and dialed her number. It rang 3 times before she answered, her voice groggy and annoyed. "What the hell do you want, Nick? You lied to me," I said, my voice deadly calm. She was silent for a moment, then sighed. Oh God, you got the results, didn't you? You knew, I said. It wasn't a question. You knew this entire time. Another pause. Then, it doesn't change anything. I laughed bitterly. Doesn't change anything? Are you insane? You stole years of my life. You had me paying child support for a kid that isn't even mine. You put me in jail for missing payments I never should have owed. How the hell does that not change anything? She's still your daughter, Ava snapped. You raised her. You were there. Biology doesn't matter, Nick. You're the only father she knows. That should have meant something. A few weeks ago, maybe it would have. But now, I knew better. I wasn't a father in Ava's eyes. I was just a paycheck, a backup plan. A safety net in case things didn't work out with Haley's real father. I clenched my teeth. Who is he? Silence. Ava, I warned. She sighed. It doesn't matter. Who is he? I demanded. A long pause, then a soft, almost reluctant answer. Zach. Felt like the final nail in the coffin. I had suspected it after reading his letter, but hearing her say it, confirming that the man I once called my best friend was Haley's biological father, sent a fresh wave of rage surging through me. How long? I asked. It was before we got married, she admitted. I didn't know I was pregnant at first. By the time I found out, I had already made my choice. I wanted a stable life, Nick. I wanted a future, and you were the better option. My stomach turned. The better option? She groaned. Come on, don't act so innocent. You had the job, the house, the stability. Zach couldn't give me that. You could. So I made the best decision for Haley. The best decision for Haley. Not for me. Not for Zach. For her. Ava had orchestrated the entire thing like it was some kind of business transaction, choosing the man who could provide her with the most security, not the one who was actually the father of her child. You're disgusting, I muttered. Oh, please, she snapped. Don't act like you're some saint. You loved her, Nick. You still do. Are you really going to just walk away from her because of a technicality? It's not a technicality, Ava. It's my entire life. You stole it from me. You're being dramatic, she said dismissively. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. I'm taking you to court, I said. For fraud. For everything. You're going to pay for what you did to me. She laughed. Actually laughed. Oh, Nick. Sweet, naive Nick. You really think any judge is going to care? You signed the birth certificate. You claimed her as your daughter for years. The law doesn't care about a DNA test. As far as they're concerned, she's still yours. I gripped the phone so tightly I thought it might shatter. You're wrong. My lawyer. Your lawyer will tell you the same thing mine did, she interrupted. You can try, but it won't change anything. I wanted to break something, to scream, to do anything other than sit in my car, listening to the woman who had ruined my life tell me how little my pain mattered. But then she said something that made my blood run cold. And even if you do get the courts to listen, she continued, do you really want to put Haley through that? Do you want her to find out like this? Do you want to be the one to destroy her world? Because trust me, if you take me to court, I will make sure she knows exactly what you're doing. And when she grows up, she'll remember that her father tried to abandon her. My hands shook. You wouldn't, I whispered. Oh, I would, she said casually. And we both know she loves you. So ask yourself, Nick, are you really willing to be the bad guy in her eyes? I hung up before I could say something I'd regret. I sat in my car for what felt like hours, staring at nothing, my mind spiraling. Ava was right about one thing. The courts would be a long, painful process, and the damage to Haley would be irreversible. If I fought this battle, if I dragged Ava through the mud, Haley would suffer the most. But I wasn't going to let Ava win either. No, there was another way. She had built her life on lies. She had manipulated me, the courts, even Zach. She thought she had control over everything. But she was about to learn something important. I wasn't the same man she had walked all over for years. And I wasn't going to play fair anymore. Ava thought she had won. But she had no idea that I was just getting started. The next few weeks were quiet. Too quiet. Ava assumed I had given up, that I had accepted my fate and moved on. She had no idea I was watching, waiting, gathering every piece of leverage I could. I reached out to Zach. At first, he ignored me, probably out of guilt, but eventually he agreed to meet. When I confronted him, he broke. He hadn't known for sure that Haley was his until Ava confirmed it recently. She had used him just like she used me, but what she didn't expect was that Zach wanted to make things right. With his help, we built a case. Evidence of her fraud, proof that she had knowingly deceived both of us, even messages where she admitted to playing the system. We took it to a lawyer, and just like that, Ava's perfect little world began to crumble. The court didn't just dismiss my child support obligations. They launched an investigation into her financial dealings. Turns out, Ava had been double-dipping, collecting money from both Zach and me under different legal claims. That was fraud. And fraud had consequences. Ava was charged. 3 years in prison. And Haley? Zach fought for custody and won. But in the end, he didn't keep her from me. He knew I had been there for her and we made a deal. Shared custody, real and honest, something Ava had never given either of us. As I walked out of the courthouse that day, Haley's hand in mine, Ava's screams echoing behind us, I finally felt it. Justice.